As Donald Trump escalates his aggressive war of censorship and Republicans reveal themselves to be largely hypocrites on the topic of free speech, a MAGA Fox News host was humiliated on his own show by an unlikely source on that very topic so badly that the MAGA Fox News host in question finally admitted defeat. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, for context, this debate is triggered or was triggered by the arrest and detainment and attempted deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, a permanent legal resident in the United States, by the Trump administration, who have heretofore not declared that he has violated any sort of law. They're simply attempting, based on the evidence that we have now, to deport him because they don't like his political speech. That's the context for this. Before we get into that, though, I want to play this clip between MAGA Fox News host Will Cain on Will Cain's show and Glenn Greenwald. And what happens might surprise you.
Held protests where he seemingly sides not just with Palestinians, but with Hamas. He has openly called for the end of Western civilization. Still, when do we go too far? What is protected by the First Amendment? As a reminder, this is how it reads. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. Join me now to debate this issue, which I think deserves hearing from both sides, is human rights attorney Brooke Goldstein and journalist and constitutional lawyer Glenn Greenwald. Thank you both. Glenn, I'd love to start with you. I find you, and for that matter, our relationship interesting because in the past I might have agreed with you vociferously. Recently, more agreement. I'm not sure where I stand here today, Glenn, but I know you look at this and you think many on the right have all of a sudden abandoned their defense of free speech.
Oh, there's no question that they have. I mean, this is what happens when you're actually a principled free speech advocate instead of one who only objects to censorship when it's your political allies who are being targeted, which is that a lot of people say they believe in free speech, except when it comes to the ideas they most hate, which they want silence. I just want to make one crucial point, which is you had said people on the far left, like Rashida Tlaib, believe that legal residents in the United States have the right of free speech. That is an indisputable proposition that the Supreme Court has for 200 years affirmed. And just imagine if that weren't the case. It would mean that if, say, like Jordan Peterson, who's not an American citizen but is always in the United States, were to go and denounce the Biden White House could arrest him and deport him, and nobody could object on constitutional grounds because he's a foreigner. Of course, people legally in the United States have the right of free speech, and we don't want to create any kind of a framework, especially on college campuses, as the American right has been saying, where because of the argument that minority groups are endangered by certain views, black people or trans people or whatever, we have to censor those views in order to create a safe environment. And that's exactly what so many American conservatives out of great loyalty to Israel are now doing.
I appreciate you saying that and correcting me on the longstanding policy on the United States First Amendment. I also would say, in correction of myself, it's not just the far left and Rashida Tlaib. It is, as you said, principal individuals, including those on the right, that would bring up the First Amendment.
So that was, again, unlikely source, but Glenn Greenwald did a really good job there by pointing out the hypocrisy of the modern MAGA movement and the Republican Party when it comes to free speech. And this is something that I've been saying for years, which is that Republicans claim to be the free speech, free press party, but they actually don't practice it because they're the most hypersensitive of the political parties. Donald Trump in particular is the most sensitive, easily disturbed politician in modern American history, in that he has repeatedly, in all three of his election campaigns, right, 2016, 2020, 2024, he has campaigned openly on suing, investigating, prosecuting, and jailing not just individual journalists, but entire media networks and news agencies because he doesn't like their coverage. No Democrat has ever done that. No pre-Trump Republican has done that. It is unique to this strain of Trumpism and MAGA and the Republican Party as it's mutated into an authoritarian cult of personality. Now, I love that Greenwald uses Jordan Peterson as an example. I don't like Jordan Peterson. I used to, actually, surprisingly, but especially as his politics became more openly deranged and far right, he just totally disavowed what he stands for now. But I would not want Jordan Peterson kicked out of the country simply because he disagrees with liberals and progressives in the Democratic Party. And if the Biden administration or a future Democratic administration were to employ this sort of logic and say, no, I don't think Jordan Peterson committed a crime, I just think that he's a threat to national security with his right-wing speech, and he were kicked out of the country because he's a Canadian citizen and not, I believe, an American citizen, how would Republicans react? Well, they'd be apoplectic, and rightly so. But for most Republicans, unfortunately, it's not really about principle, it's about power, and that's why they're abusing it now in the case of Mahmoud Khalil. Speaking of Mahmoud Khalil, here is Democratic Senator Chris Murphy recapping the situation and explaining why everyone, including conservatives, including Trump supporters, should give a damn about what's happening.
A young man by the name of Mahmoud Khalil, an immigrant and a legal permanent resident of the United States, is being held right now in prison, even though no criminal charges have been filed against him. And I want to tell you why that should matter to every single American. Khalil is a recent graduate of Columbia University. He opposed Israel's military operation in Gaza. He has deep animus toward Israel's policies and the U.S. support for those policies. He helped organize the protests over Gaza at his university last year. You can disagree with his views or his politics, but there is no evidence he has broken any law. But last weekend, Trump officials entered his apartment and took him into custody. They brought him to a detention facility in New Jersey at first, but when his family went to visit him, he wasn't there. For a while, his family and his lawyer had no idea where he was. They eventually found out that he was being held in a detention facility in Louisiana, and that's where he still is today. In dictatorships, they call this practice being disappeared. No charges, no claims of criminal behavior. The White House doesn't claim he did anything criminal. He's in jail because of his political speech. And here's why everybody should care. In America, your political speech is protected, whether or not the president likes what you say. But today, if you're loyal to Donald Trump, your speech is going to be protected, even if it's hate speech. You can be Marco Ellis, an employee of Doge, who said he, quote, was racist before it was cool, and, quote, normalize Indian hate. And the vice president of the United States will tweet in your defense. But if you are disloyal to Trump, or you're organizing against Trump's political agenda, your speech could be criminalized. You could find yourself in jail. Now, Trump chose to begin by disappearing a Palestinian immigrant, hoping that his place of birth and his immigrant status would just cause people to look the other way. But we cannot. Because once it becomes normal for the regime to disappear people simply for protest against the regime's policies, once a citizen or a resident of America can be locked away with no charges against them simply because they protested, there is no going back for America. Even if you're a hardened Trump supporter, this practice should cross the line for you. Even if you disagree with Khalil's views, this practice should cross the line for you. This has nothing to do with supporting Trump. This is about supporting an American value, maybe the most important American value, protecting free speech, even if it's speech you disagree with. If our new reality is that a president can disappear an opposition protester with no charges filed against them, we are not America any longer. Today it's Mahmoud Khalil. Tomorrow,
it's me or you, the video says. It's a very powerful video from Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. And again, it'd be one thing if Mahmoud Khalil broke the law and somehow him breaking that law or any law or a particular law by virtue of him being a permanent legal resident made him eligible for deportation. Then even if we disagreed with it, at the very least we could say, okay, it's on the books, it can be done. But it's not even that. As far as we know, this is just a blatant, illegal, and unconstitutional act and a flexing of authoritarian executive authority by Donald Trump. And it's really dangerous, not just in this particular instance. It's also for the precedent it potentially creates in the future. Donald Trump is waging a war of censorship, a war of free speech. Time is reporting on this. Trump campaigned as a protector of free speech. Critics say his actions as president threaten it. Of course, we have the situation with Mahmoud Khalil. And again, the Trump administration did disappear him. They abducted him from New York, transferred him to Louisiana, didn't really tell anybody about it. It was just discovered by reporters, things of that nature. Khalil's attorneys, have not been permitted to see Khalil. I don't think even his American citizen wife was permitted to see Khalil. And the only reason he hasn't been deported is because a federal judge intervened and temporarily blocked the issue while they litigate it. You also have, the situation with not only Trump's various lawsuits as the sitting president against news agencies and media networks that he doesn't like, but his FCC, led by MAGA loyalist Brendan Carr, has been surgically targeting, media networks and news agencies that Trump has criticized in the past, while protecting those agencies that are seen as more loyal to Donald Trump's agenda. We've just never seen anything like this. But this is where we are, and it is truly a dangerous precedent. And yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say about this. I mean, we're only 6 weeks in, close to 6 weeks in. Excuse me. We are close to 2 months in, right? We're 7 weeks in, and they're pulling out all the stops. But at the very least, we can, however cold comfort it is, we can say that MAGA Fox News host Will Cain was humiliated so brutally on the subject that he publicly admitted defeat to Glenn Greenwald, who for once was right on this particular issue and stopped grading Donald Trump on a curve as he often does. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.